Greetings, everybody. As you all come into the room, I am once again delighted to see you, feel your presence, being together once again on this incredibly powerful full moon that we're having tonight, or today, as the case may be, depending on your time zone. We've been meeting for 30 years on the full moon to carry out this practice of global healing and now collective awakening. And this is such a special evening because we have with us my dear friend, beloved teacher, mentor, Deena Metzger. And before I introduce Deena, let me just say a couple more things about the practice for those of you who might be new to this gathering. It started in 1990 when I met a 106-year-old Tibetan Lama living in a cave named Charok Rinpoche. He was in a remote part of Nepal, and I found myself walking up the path with this incredible opportunity to literally meet the old wise man in the cave. And I realized I better figure out a pretty good question to ask him. And so I was pondering that as I was walking up the path, and what came to me is still my question, which is, what can we do to bring healing and protection to the earth? And to make a long story short, he gave me this practice of the Earth Treasure Vases, or vases, however you say it, which is an old Tibetan practice that has come forward in these times much more strongly because the times are calling for it. The earth is calling for healing and for protection and for renewal, as we all know. So the practice has come alive over these last 30 years as we've taken it all around the world to what will be probably 85 locations when we're done, with 3 generations of these Earth Treasure Vases. And it has been a journey of a lifetime, going into communities and cultures all around the planet where healing and protection is called for. So that is probably enough about the background, because I'm sure most of you already know that story. And in the tradition of the lamas and of the practices that I have followed in the Buddhist tradition, we always invoke the kind of the lineage to remember that this is a living tradition and we're carrying it now forward in new ways. This practice has come to life in amazing new ways, and Deena Metzger has helped with that. So let me turn now to introducing her to you. Deena is a poet. She's a novelist, an essayist, storyteller, teacher, healer, and medicine woman in her own right. She's taught and counseled for 50 years and developed her own kind of therapies to address personal and collective crisis on every level. Deena conducts training groups on the spiritual, creative, political, and ethical aspects of healing and of peacemaking. And she draws deeply from an alliance with spirit, with indigenous teachings, and with many wisdom traditions. Her writing concerns itself with the interplay between the human and the natural world in hopes of restoring a pathway for a viable future for all beings. She's written something called the 19 Ways to the Fifth World, and I want to bring that into the conversation tonight. Her titles, her books are wonderful. Some of the titles are The Woman Who Slept with Men to Take the War Out of Them, Intimate Nature, Women's Bond with Animals, Writing for Your Life, Entering the Ghost River, Meditations on the Theory and Practice of Healing. Her most recent book that I read was called A Reign of Night Birds. It's a novel, amazing novel about climate change. And her newest book is coming soon. It's called La Vieja, Journal of Fire. She started a new blog recently called Desperate Love Letters for a Wounded Earth. I recommend you subscribe. And Deena works with writers to develop their literary voices that are the voices that are essential for these times. And she's a mentor to those of us who are seeking to be healing presences for the future. I feel my emotion rising as I read that, because this is what we need. And Deena has dedicated herself to this. Her work is about envisioning a future for all beings and considering the new forms of peacemaking, healing, and sanctuary. Oh gosh, sorry. Yeah. Whew. Deena, welcome.
What a welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
I feel this with you, you know, I feel so grateful for the work that you're doing and how it's touched my life. And I hope how it will touch all the lives of everyone here. Your perspective, your commitment is so strong. And it's just wonderful to have you here and have you come into this circle and this community. When I began to work with the treasure vases so long ago, I knew that I needed you, but I didn't really know you then. And so I remember seeking you out. I think we'd met, I think at a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh that I organized and things like that, but we didn't know each other very well. But I sought you out and I asked for your, you know, guidance and participation to what extent that was possible. I realized as I was thinking about tonight that to me, you're an embodiment of what it means to be a sacred activist, which is, you know, a thing that we talk about now, and that I consider this practice of the treasure vases to be also kind of an embodiment of. So
This is interesting because I heard you say, I think you probably said a sacred activist. But
yes,
what I heard was a sacred optimist. And that's intriguing. So I want to offer that to you.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're feeling optimistic in this moment, because there's a lot to feel not so optimistic about.
Yes, but there's no choice.
Yeah.
It's ethically and spiritually required. So
thank you. Thank you.
Whether we do it or not, we have to do it.
We do. And that's what I come back to that over and over myself. You know, it's like the reason why we're here tonight doing this practice is because we want to cultivate our optimism and our commitment to standing in that light, in that what we love and what we want to see in the world. So after we met, you were the one who suggested that the first treasure vase for Africa go to Liberia, where you had been doing peace building work.
Oh, we have to go back.
We do.
Yes, we do. First, you came to an intensive. We spent a week together. We came to an intensive in Pine Mountain. And then I don't know how it happened that I came to see you in Santa Fe, and you had finished the first round of the Earth Treasure Vases, and you were not sure, as I recall, what you wanted to do. And we went up, we took a hike, and it was one of the most extraordinary days. We went up to the Cave of the Winds, which is right above Los Alamos. And I had actually been doing some work with a cousin of mine who was a geologist at Los Alamos and was trying to bring some healing, trying to bring some protection and some healing to that place. And we were profoundly concerned with what comes out of Los Alamos. It's, it's an epicenter of danger for the world.
Mhm.
And so we went up to this cave where you had a vision, you had begun the Earth Treasure Vases, is that right? Would you tell us what that was about, and then I'll continue?
Well, when I started to work with the treasure vases, I was very moved by the notion of bioregions and feeling as if this area where I live, um, the bioregion is defined by the Rio Grande River, which runs right through it from southern Colorado all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And here in right across from where I live in Santa Fe is Los Alamos National Laboratory, which produces nuclear weapons and has a tremendous amount of radioactive waste associated with that. And it was part of my motivation in my question about what can we do to bring healing and protection to the earth, to the old llama, was motivated by what do we do about this? And so the llamas who made the vases really poured a lot into those vases and made them very potent for us because of what we were trying to address. So I found through a friend this cave, which I usually don't name because I don't really want people to know that there's a vase there, but there is, and it's right up above the laboratory. And so I consider that location to be the center of the mandala. And then I went to each of the 4 directions from there in this bioregion and planted 4 other vases to make up the mandala, what ended up being the mandala. And now it's gone out in all these places all around the world, which we'll invoke during the meditation. And now we have this living being that is this mandala that is filled with Earth Treasure Vases, filled with our prayers and offerings that are doing this work. So that's how it got started.
So being there with you and meditating with you, and as I recall, we may have different stories, but that's how stories are. You decided in the cave that you would do another round. And if I consider what you've done since, it was as if in that place that called forth this activity, you committed your whole life again, because you somehow knew what has transpired, that you were not just going to do a round and then you would be done, even though that's not how you framed it then. This was the practice that will define your life. And so when I think about you, I think about us in that place.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about the vases, I think about them there. It's as if that was the mother of,
Yeah.
of it. And of course, being in the earth. In the
Deep down. Yeah. Deep cave, deep, amazing cave. Yeah. Some of the people on this call have also been to that cave. So yeah, so there was a point where I realized I had to go to Africa. I'd been a lot of places and I'd had help from people here and there with the original vases, but I hadn't been to Africa and I knew I had to go. And it was you who told me where I need to go.
Well, in part because I was working in Africa, but I had also been connected with Zimbabwe, so it would not be the only place I would think of. There was no question in my mind that Liberia, which had suffered the most brutal civil war and which was healing in part through the work of Everyday Gandhis, which was committed to grassroots peacekeeping ways, and trying to imagine that. And we were working there, Cynthia Travis, who had started this amazing organization, we were working with ex-child soldiers, and we were working with a former rebel general. We were working in what had been the most dangerous county. And we were working with people with their dreams and with their visions. And Cynthia had, through a series of dreams, had inspired what were called morning feasts.
This is Cynthia Travis, the founder of Everyday Gandhis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so a morning feast is the feast that you have when someone dies, and you need to cross them. You need everyone in the community or the family to be there. And the secret of it is you're all going to eat out of a common bowl. And in order to do that, you can't be enemies. And so here were all these dead in the Civil War who had not been buried, who had not been crossed. And with a small group of people, of traditional people, Christian people, Muslims, they created a morning feast. 1,000 people came. And all the traditions were there. I mean, even when I think about it now, and it's just that 16 years ago. Stunning. How could the Earth Treasure Vase go anywhere else?
Right.
It's just had to be there, and you accommodated.
Well, and I didn't even know where Liberia was, or how in the world it would be, the treasure vase would be accepted in a place like that. But then I met many of the Liberian people that you were working with Everyday Gandhis. I brought a vase to a ceremony that you invited me to attend. And we began to fill that vase with prayers for peace for Liberia. And then I knew I had to go. And so it was 2009 when I went to Liberia. And it too was one of the most profound experiences of my life, because through the work that you and Everyday Gandhis did in that community, which was the worst fought area of the war, with all the tribal people and all the Christian and Muslim people and leaders and everyone. And so when we went to bury the vase, which by the way, the ancestors had to be consulted about whether or not the vase was to be accepted. And so that had to be done, which was another amazing ceremony. But then it was decided that yes, this was wanted. 500 people came to that ceremony that we did with the treasure vase from 3 countries, because they all share a border. And to sit in that circle and witness all those prayers for peace, having from people who had lived through, as you say, the most brutal civil war.
So all those people who were there, the 500 and the 1,000,
yes, they
were fighting against each other. They were killing each other. And now they were creating these peace ceremonies together. Astonishing.
Yeah.
And continuing to this day.
And so when we buried the vase in the village outside of Wonjama, the elders said, now what? This was important. We want to remember what happened here. What should we do next? And that's not for me to say, because it's their land. What are their prayers? What do they want? So what was decided was to build a peace hut, which is a place where people can go to resolve conflict traditionally, and to be together in a sacred way, in a way of listening and peacemaking. And now, just to sort of fast forward, the nonprofit that I run has built 4 peace huts in 4 conflict-prone regions of Liberia, and worked for many years with these people that Deena introduced me to, ex-combatants, former child soldiers, women who stopped the war in Liberia, under the peace huts. And so this is this really extraordinary peace building work that took root in Liberia through, in my case, through the Earth Treasure Vase practice, and then to have been able to bring some of these same people to meet Thich Nhat Hanh and learn the practice of mindfulness from me and from him, and to bring that into the work as well. Yeah.
And that work of mindfulness was particularly important during the Ebola pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
because Bethelson and who else?
Harper.
Were
Yeah.
on the radio trying to give people some way of handling the incredible terror and chaos of that time.
They did a program called Conversations Under the Peace Huts, and it was a national radio program where they talked about mindfulness and nonviolence and bringing mindful awareness to the Ebola outbreak, which is also applicable during COVID, of course. Yeah. So thank you, Deena. I mean, my life changed completely and totally going to Liberia. And the treasure vase practice came alive in a way that it hadn't before that. And I'm still deeply connected to Christian Bethelson, the former rebel general that you mentioned, Harper Carmen, who is his great colleague and friend, who is so capable of in his peace building work, and Annie Nushin. I don't know if you ever met her, another woman who was one of the leaders of the women's peace movement. So there's much more to say about all of that, and someday I would love to bring those folks to our call, which I've done in the past, but not recently. But you know, this was a great gift. And Deena, you spent time in South Africa or Zimbabwe with
Mandaza Kandemwa.
Mandaza, yes. And he brought you a practice. I was thinking about this too, because it was sort of like me receiving the treasure vases from this old lama in the cave. You met Mandaza and he gave you this practice of Dare, which you've been carrying out for many, many years. Can you tell us what Dare is and how it works and what it's shown you? I mean, that's probably a big question, but
Yes, what is it? Dare is the gathering of there are 2 people here at least who come to Dare regularly. So I'm looking at Lori smiling as I'm going to try to explain what it is. She's having the gathering of the community on behalf of healing. But it's the gathering of the community with the spirits. It's deeply listening to the spirits and deeply listening to the earth and listening to dreams, listening to learning how to hear what is coming from across the veil. And of course we made it our own, because how else could you do it? Dara means council. And when we were in Zimbabwe with Mandaza, so we sat in council all the time. We got up in the morning, we told dreams, and we sat in council, and healing occurred in council. And often the spirits really came in. They did their version of a sweat lodge during council. They did immersion in water. Dare is being in council with the spirits and healing in whatever ways are right for that community in that moment. So we've done it since April 1999. And we used to meet here on the land, and we will soon again. But 2 years, through the pandemic, of course, we've done it on Zoom. Who could believe that it could happen on Zoom? But how could this happen on Zoom, right? Because I've sat in your conference room, in your diary room with you, and here we are in this form.
And in the Dare, you have different parts to it that go on for many hours, and there's a dream sharing, and there's a council, and can you just sort of say what some of those components are?
So when we were on the land, I do Zoom in 12-hour segments. That makes sense to me. I'm the only person on the planet it makes sense to, but 9 hours or 12 hours or whatever. So when we met on the land, people came for healing. And so we spoke to them, and what's the story? I guess, what's the story behind the illness? And then the person would tell the community when we gathered, and we would gather around them and in prayer and with music. Incredibly profound. Why healing occurred, I would never dare speculate, but people left different. And maybe it was just the essential healing of community, that the community had gathered on behalf of someone who was suffering.
Yeah.
What an extraordinary thing. And it was totally sincere. So that was the first part. Then we would have a meal together, also incredibly important. Just break bread. We did a little ritual of breaking bread, blessing the bread in whatever languages were spoken. And then to eat a meal together. And then we sit in council, sit with a question that a group of conveners understands is the necessary focus for the community at this time. And then when it gets dark, we tell dreams. We tell dreams in the old ways, understanding that dreams are sent to the community, to the tribe, by the dream spirits to address traditionally certain questions. How should we live? What is the true nature of the world? What is the ethical system? How do we treat each other? Teaches us how we treat each other. What is happening in the world that we need to meet? And what do we need to change in ourselves? It's quite interesting now, after meeting this way for so many years, the dreams have changed. And when we meet on Zoom, we sit in council. We start in the beginning, we just address whatever's necessary in terms of healing. And then council question comes up. Council's held by the conveners. And then we tell dreams. More and more frequently, one person tells a dream, another person tells a dream. Suddenly we realize we could be 7 or 8 people who've come in with a dream. It's the same dream. And so it is clear, it's verified each time that the dreams are not psychological. That thinking of dreams psychologically is a distortion of a way of touching profound wisdom needed at this time. To say that the dreams are for us when they are for the entire community is major.
Yes. Yes.
That gives you a sense of.
That gives us a sense for sure.
And I think the other thing is that over time we hear each other's stories and we carry these stories. And so if you think about a community as being a group of people who know each other's stories, those stories create a culture. And that culture becomes a foundation that holds us.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Well, I feel like this is what's starting to happen in our what we call now the Gaia Mandala Global Healing Community, because we've got quite a few practices going in groups meeting on a regular basis, as well as this full moon meditation that's been going on for so long. And so I'm excited to join you more this year to, kind of cross-pollinate. And I want to move in two directions before we go into the meditation, Deena. And it's building right on the heels of what you've just shared about Dare and culture, building culture. Um, One of them is the culture of the elephants. And the other one is to talk about the 19 ways. So let's start with the elephants, because I just feel it's important to bring in the other beings. And you have had an amazing cultural experience with elephants over many years. And it also is really touching to me. So can you tell us about maybe the ambassador?
As the ambassador in 1998, probably, I'd had a crazy thought. I wanted to sit in council with Mandaza's people, and I wanted to sit in council with the elephants. And Mandaza asked me, "What do you mean?" And I said, "I have no idea." So we went to Chobe, uh, which has the largest population of elephants on a reserve in Africa. And short story, or long story, very short. On the last day, the last hour of the last day, um, we were in a truck together. I was in the back in the open bed. Mandaza saw a fisher eagle, the chipungo, land on a tree. And as far as he was concerned, that was his totem. He wasn't going anywhere else. And so we stood in the tree, and way off, I saw an elephant. And I had this feeling of terror because I knew that he was coming to us, that this was the one that I wanted to see. And he did. He came, he stood in front of me for half an hour.
Hmm.
There was no question. We looked into each other's eyes for half an hour at three different places on the truck. And in the course of it, I said to him in my mind, "I know who you are because you come from a Holocausted people, and so do I." And I said, "People are my people." And we had to leave because the preserve was closing. We had to be out of there. And now we started going down the road. He had taken off, and all these elephants were coming down the hill onto the road by the river. And you must not go between a matriarch and her babies. I mean, that's just death, but we had no choice. And so I said, "They know we're here. We're going to go very, very slowly." And they lined up. This is not believable. It happens, but it really, still, it's not believable. They lined up along the road as we went by, and they bowed their heads and flapped their ears. So they communicated in a narrative way, right? Here is a narrative story without words. So I have gone back, I don't know how many times, 8 times, went to Chobe, then wanted to see what would happen if we went somewhere else. what at some point we had to go with a guide, what would happen if we went with a guide, what would happen if we went with a guide from the various places. Every time another story enacted.
Mhm. Mhm.
One can only conclude that the elephants are as engaged with the spiritual world and dynamic as we hope to be.
Mhm. Mhm.
And and very clear to me over time that these are incredibly intelligent, socially advanced, peaceful beings
Yes.
who only become belligerent after having been warred upon by humans. And
Yeah.
so what we see is happening all over the world, where people who were never warlike begin acting in horrific ways. They've learned it from Western culture.
Mhm.
That is our teaching to them.
Mhm.
But without our interference,
Mhm.
they are incredibly peaceful, being taking exquisite care of each other and the children.
Mhm. Mhm.
The 19 ways, I just want to correct you. I think you
Okay.
said something that I wrote it or thought it or whatever. They were given to me. I never would have known to come up with them in a million years.
How were they given to you?
Well, I just had them. I was writing them down. But I recognized that they were 19 ways that if we could incorporate all of them, our minds would change and we would no longer be the people who create extinction and climate collapse.
Mhm.
And at the very core and the most difficult of the 19 ways is one that I've been working with and I've just written about in the blog that Cynthia spoke about, is the no enemy way.
Mhm.
And I've spent all the years since these came in 2012. They actually came in 2012 in that extraordinary year of transformation.
Yes.
I've been trying to understand what the no enemy way is. And you can imagine in these times we're living in that we are consistently challenged
Mhm.
and uh, to recognize that those others also must have reasons
Mhm.
for the way that they are acting. So to meet everything with respect and curiosity.
Mhm.
It's quite a teaching. I mean,
Yeah.
19 ways have undone me, and as they should, and everyone that studies them with me.
Mhm.
But the task is to change our minds so that all our responses are free from what for me is the devastating philosophy of Western imperialism.
Western, what did you say?
Imperialist minds.
Mhm. 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 Yes. Yes. Well, I feel like we sort of need to move towards the meditation, but is there anything that you might say about having worked with these 19 ways about how we do live now for a future to be possible?
Well, for me, one would live according to each one of them. So if the no enemy way is in the center, and
Yes.
the first one for me is spirit exists. if you recognize that spirit exists, how then do you live? That's one question. And at the end, the last one is heart mind, that instead of the mind, the intellect, if we imagine and understand as Indigenous people do, and as Indigenous people told Jung, oh, you people think that you think from the brain? No, we think from the heart. So if every thought and decision is made from the heart, we're already in a different world.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
And the absolute presence, beauty, wisdom, and essence of the natural world. The natural world needs to be honored. And if we could live according to it, according to its laws, then we're also in a different world of interrelationship, interconnection.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for providing another path, another Dharma door, as some would say. And one of the 19 ways is the pathless path, right? Where we enter into the great mystery and open to that. So I have the greatest respect for you, Deena, and so grateful for your visionary capacity to help us all to see and heal. And I want to invite everyone here, either on the call or listening later, to explore those 19 ways and all of that we've been talking about, and to take this conversation into our hearts,
Into your hearts. Yeah.
so that where the place that we act from going forward is connected to the web of life and to our deepest heart of hearts and our deepest caring. And the vase can facilitate that. This little holy vessel is a receptacle for exactly that we pour our hearts into, and then we plant in the earth in places where that is needed. So I've brought out, this is what I call the mama vessel. This is the last of the original treasure vases, the first generation that I received from the old lama. And it's holding space for all the rest of them to be buried, and then this one too will be buried. And we don't really know where. But as we go into the meditation, I would like to ask you, Deena, as you're receiving the meditation, and we'll all, just to say, we're going to open the lines after the meditation for everyone who would like to make an offering, say a prayer, or reflect on some of what Deena has shared. So your time will come. But for now, it's like a chance for us to be a vessel, to contain all of this, to be with it. And Deena, for you, as a mama vessel, because I know in Liberia you were called Mama Deena. So this is a mama vessel, Deena. And I'm going to open it, and I'm going to ask you, as you're taking in the meditation tonight, if there is a particular place in the world, or places. I mean, we'll invoke many, many locations, and we all know there's things going on everywhere, but I'd like for you to, have the chance to direct your prayers into this mama vessel, on all of our behalf, however you are moved to coming out of the meditation.
Not
So,
now, but then.
yeah, I mean, is there anything you would like to say now going into this? No. So then we'll go into the meditation and we'll see what comes, because we're opening to that larger world of spirit.